Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all here today on a beautiful sunny, not June yet, last day of May, right? Yes, but summer is here, it seems like. Well, welcome to Contemporary Issues Sunday School class. We are so pleased today to have our Communications and Marketing Director of our church with us, Catherine Keenum. And I was just telling Catherine that we talk about these kind of things occasionally in this class and have questions about what we do with our internal and external communications. And she's going to tell us all about that today. Websites and apps and what appeals to older folks like us and younger folks and what's effective today. And before we start that, our announcements, Zoomers, thank you for joining us today. We will have a little slideshow, and I'm looking at this too. Actually want to let the Zoomers know we're not going to be able to show the slideshow on share screen, so I'm going to try and aim our camera at the TV screen so you can see it that way. We're just having a little technical challenge today with our slideshow. And we're not the most technical people in the world, so we'll do the best we can.
You need a new computer.
And we are recording this for future playback on YouTube for those folks who can't be with us. And any other announcements? Things going on in the church? Okay. World news. Iran war still going on this week, and hope we're praying for that. Any quick comments on things in the news? I know after a while we just become accustomed to so much in the news. It's just overwhelming, isn't it? Yes, Norley.
The Kennedy Center.
The Kennedy Center. I know. So many of these things come up and there's such a drama, and then the judges weigh in and they go back
And it'll
down.
have to go to the Supreme Court.
And then the Supreme Court. I know. That's the way of the world these days. Okay. We want to leave plenty of time for Catherine to tell us and show us about her slides. And she asked to hold most of our questions until she's done. We'll have discussion time at the end, but prepare your questions and your opinions and comments. And before we do that, I want to give a quick bio introduction of Catherine. And she is from Florida originally, right? Florida State University.
Well, I went to school there.
You went to
I
school
was
there.
a swimmer, yes.
You were a swimmer there. Okay. Where did you grow up as a child?
In Georgia.
Georgia. A Georgia peach.
By way of California.
By way of
I
California.
created the map of my life.
You've
It's
been around.
across, back, forth, up, down, north, south. east,
Very
west.
good. But most recently in Bloomfield, Michigan. You were a high school public speaker, public coach.
Yeah, I
public
coached forensics,
speakers,
public speaking.
forensics.
For
Oh,
high
wow.
school students
Whoa.
and middle
Very
school
good.
students, yes.
And then you went into communications and marketing with Christ Church. Was your last position at Grosse Pointe, Michigan? And before that, you were 12 years at Kirk in the Hills Church, which was Presbyterian.
Mhm.
So, right, and she was telling us it's about the same size as St. Andrew. And is that home for you, Ann?
I love it. So you know the Kirk?
Yep.
Yeah. It's a great
Michigan.
place. Yeah.
Michiganders. And Catherine's husband is Tim. He works for Apple, the big Apple company here. But that's interesting. We should have him come and tell us about that sometime. And your kids are Carson and Harrison. Right? Okay. And what do you do for fun when you're not working here?
Oh, gosh. Anything outdoors and moving.
And moving.
Mhm. If
Okay.
we're outside and moving, the Kenhams are happy. So
Good.
we love to ski, hike, paddleboard, anything outdoors.
Good. Okay. All righty. Well, please welcome Catherine.
Thanks so much for having me. I guess the best part about having been here for 2.5 years now is the fact that I look around the room and most every face is familiar. It's great. And I know some of you by name too. So for not 12 years yet, but 2.5 years. So I wanted to just give an overview of what our team handles for the church. And first and foremost, when I was interviewing for this position, I think the one thing that really struck me was the fact that St. Andrew stands for so many of the things that I strongly believe in and strongly can support. I began my marketing and communications career and advertising. Actually, I was pretty heavily involved with advertising and working with agencies. That's how I met my husband, was through advertising, because he worked for some big ad agencies all over the country, and that's why we've lived all over the country, is mainly because of his advertising. But we finally realized, once the second child in the household graduated from college, that we could go anywhere we want. It didn't have to be all based on who has the best school districts anymore. So that sort of drove a lot of our decisions. I have deep family roots in Colorado, in the Boulder area, that go back many, many generations. Actually have gold mine property, which is kind of cool. It's sort of a joke. It's sort of a fun thing to have a piece of Colorado up there near Gold Hill, Colorado. But yeah, deep family roots here. So we always knew that we would hope to at least eventually make this our home, which we have. So I'm happy to be here. As far as my background, I guess about halfway through, I've been at this for several decades. And I think the one thing that made the difference for me was realizing that as much as the experience of working in a big corporation and marketing and strategic planning was a wonderful career opportunity, it was lucrative, it was door opening, it was really high energy, which I'm a high energy person, so that was a good fit. But let me tell you, it got a little old just putting more money in the CEO's pocket, quite honestly. And I knew that I could transfer my skills to something or a place that I cared about. And so when we moved to Michigan, we were very involved with our church, Kirk in the Hills, and I did some pro bono work for them. I produced some videos for them, did some marketing piece, some collateral materials, and they were like, maybe we need more of you. Can you come work for us? So we basically, you have to realize that in 2008, there weren't any other churches that had marketing people, communications people. It didn't exist, because think about it. The internet barely existed. We barely had cell phones. Websites, not many. If you saw a church website, then you would sort of cringe. So I saw an opportunity, just based on my love for this church and this organization, to again move from more of the corporate work to this nonprofit, and created the department, built it from the ground up in terms of new website. I think I built a total of 4 websites over the time that I was there for 12 years. Because if you know technology, you know that each platform only has a limited shelf life. It's going to work or do what you need to do for a few years, but then with new advancements, you always want to stay up to speed. So I did a lot of work with all the ministries there, websites, social media, all the things that churches just weren't doing at that point. I had churches all over the country calling me saying, tell us how you built this website for your church. So that was really fun. That was how I got and made the shift really from corporate to nonprofit. And then when we moved here, and then I worked with Christ Church remotely quite a bit during COVID, as we were transitioning with our move, and that worked out perfectly because I was born and baptized Episcopalian, so that was a good fit. But then when we moved here, I just sort of randomly saw this position, and as soon as I dug a bit deeper into who St. Andrew is and what we're all about, I thought, okay, I could put my skills to use here. So anyway, that's the story. I'm here. So I want to tell you a bit about our team, which is fantastic. You probably have seen Tori on the left. She's been on our team for about 2 years. And then Nicole on the right is our newest addition. She's only been on board for 3 months. And she has a hospitality background, actually has some really transferable skills, did a lot of marketing and communications in hospitality. And whereas here we have ministries, she was used to all those departments like food and beverage and, all the different areas that were so similar. So that's our team. We have weekly planning meetings, very strategic, every Monday morning. as far as the information and the input that we receive from the church, that comes by way of, it's like a room reservation / publicity request. So if you want to have an event here, whether or not you're a group or a ministry, you reserve a room, and then for our ministries, they receive our publicity support. So that's when our team gets involved. And that's something we work at a minimum of 30 days out. So if someone, drops an email, hey, can you print this by tomorrow? That's going to be tough because we work that far in advance. I mean, we are really, the volume of what comes through our department is pretty mind blowing. And now with some additional ministries that we have, new ministries like groups and the well-being ministry, and all these things need our support. So we are constantly in motion. Just a few words about our rebranding. The perfect timing for me to come on board. I did rebranding and corporate mergers and transitions and such in the corporate world. So probably 3 different church rebrands as well. So the timing was perfect for me to come into the picture. We worked on our rebranding for over a year, developed our vision and mission statements, which you're probably familiar with by now. Also part of the branding process was developing a brand promise. And I want to see how this resonates with you if you've never read this before. This, again, is just our brand promise. At St. Andrew, we honor every individual unconditionally. We value diversity in people and perspectives, openly embrace questions and doubts, and engage in acts of faith that help shape God's unfolding future. Transformed by Christ's love, persuaded by God's call, we boldly work together to care for the whole creation. And I think if you were part of the process, you know that we went back and forth with this word by word, moment by moment, and feel like we really landed on a strong brand promise. And how that translates just to the general public is the tagline that you see associated with our logo, which is boundless love, evolving faith, and inspiring action. So that's how those two work together. And from our team's perspective, these messages really anchor our work. They provide, they outline really our purpose as to why we're here and what we do and why we do it. And so everything that we work on really needs to line up with this. And that's a really important cross-check that we make when we work on any project. In case you haven't seen them, these are just a few of our logo variations. We have a horizontal format, more of a vertical format. Sometimes we have it with the tagline, sometimes without. It really just depends graphically on the project that we're working on. Sometimes it's based on the importance of putting our tagline with the logo. Sometimes it's not necessary. So there's a lot of thought that goes into every usage. The color palette was also developed as part of our rebranding, which is, again, gives us the tools to do all the graphics and things that we create on a daily basis. You've probably been asked to use some of our new digital tools. The new website here in the center has been just super helpful. That was like my big project last year. Once we got through the rebranding, was to build the new website. And we're really happy with how it turned out. A company named Subsplash is the platform. And so you'll see that we have a Subsplash app. But you've also heard us talk about our Church Center app. So there's 2 different apps involved. And let me tell you why. They each have different purposes. So as a comparison, the Subsplash app on the left, that is more driven. It's directly connected to our website, and it's really media intensive. If you're someone who maybe travels a lot, or whoops, I missed church today, I want to make sure I can easily get back to today's service and watch that, the Subsplash app is the way to go. It's so media supportive and strong in that area. We work directly with the production team to interface with all the live streaming pieces of what we do. And so that's the importance of that app. Whereas the Church Center app is really designed for members to use, people who are deeply ingrained in the church and maybe they're part of some small groups. A lot of ministries and groups are using the Church Center app to communicate directly for some direct messaging, updates on, oh, we've moved our meeting to 10 o'clock next week. Some of those quick messaging needs can be fulfilled through the Church Center app. So see me afterwards. If you need help downloading either of those, I'm happy to help you. As far as our team is concerned, sure, we do a lot of work directly with ministries, and I'll get into that in just a minute. But the most important thing to realize is there's some pretty hefty church-wide communications that need to happen on a weekly basis. For example, all the worship materials, all the bulletins, we do 3 different variations of our bulletin every week. We do a separate one for the chapel service because it has a completely different order of worship. And then the 9 a.m. and the 10:45 a.m. each have their own order of worship. So I'm part of that team that meets, the worship team that meets on Tuesday mornings, and we work through all the mechanics of what next Sunday's services look like. Very detail oriented, the work that we have to do to get those bulletins just the way they need to be. And then of course we deal with changes that might pop up. So our department is working really hard each week on all the bulletins. Again, another big example of more of a church-wide communication that we're involved with, all the stewardship campaigns. I noticed that Carla is in the back. Hi, Carla. Carla, our new development officer, will be the person that we work with this year on stewardship materials. In the past, it's been Mike Musgrave, who's done a great job as a volunteer working with us. But any of the campaign materials, once we have our direction and our strategy, we develop the actual pieces of the campaign, whether it be print pieces, social media, how we're going to push this out digitally. Are there videos involved? So that's how we get involved, or our team gets involved with the big campaigns. So that's sort of some, big picture, gives you a big picture idea of the things that we're involved with daily and weekly for the church. Now here's the fun part. Working with the ministries, all these people that you see here, all the different directors are fantastic. That's one of the things I mentioned to Steve was I was going to be very selective if I was going to take another job with a big church because I had had such an amazing team before. And once I got to know all of these directors and their areas of specialty, I knew I was in the right place. These people are pros. They're dedicated. We all have the same heart for this church that you would hope a director would have. And every person on this screen, we work with every week. So we are constantly supporting the needs of each of these ministries, not just church-wide ministries, but these individual ministries as well. So again, that's a lot of our time too. And speaking of which, with those ministries, we develop their internal communications. And that could be anything from the e-newsletters, the big monstrous, as I call it, the monstrous email that comes out on Fridays. That comes from our department, and it is, down to the last minute, what needs to be included this week. We cover every ministry. We have to be very selective in terms of how far out we can push things because we've already reached sort of the maximum of content that we can include in the weekly email. We've sort of maxed it out. We also do individual ministry emails or support them as needed. For example, the senior adult newsletter, we work with Barb, Rev Barb on those newsletters. We help the youth email with the youth emails, some of the outreach emails. So all of those targeted emails also come through our department for the most part. For print materials, you'll see that we have that resource wall. It's outside the workroom, and we've got that nicely organized, and it's kind of a flex space in that we can, as events come and go and ministries have things going on and then go quiet a little bit, we can modify that wall. But please stop by and see all the new materials that we have. And as you can imagine, when we rebranded, we had to change all of our materials, every single piece, because we had, again, new logo, new formatting, new font, new color palette. So everything within the church had to be rebranded. There are a few pieces still outstanding, but all the priority materials have been changed over. Some more internal communications. You notice the kiosks when you walk through the atrium. Again, those rotate, and that's part of our matrix of marketing and advertising offerings for the church. it's a matrix, and when we have those planning meetings, we determine which tools are going to be needed for which different ministry focus. So it's a lot of planning and it's a lot of organization. The Reach digital display, that's new since I've come on board. That was sort of like put in my lap. And it's been great because we're able to not only display the calendar events, that's handled by the admin team because, you know, it's all dealing with room reservations. So Kathy Rogers in the administration or on the administration team handles the calendar part, but we handle all those marketing slides. And again, it's on a rotating basis. We have to know when to take them up and down and make changes. The changes are made to the events, so it's quite a bit. And then all those little portable signs, we call them the signs in the silver stands, because we can move those around. If a memorial pops up, we're out in the hall putting the memorial direction signs up. If an event's coming up that needs directions, we can take care of that. All right, let's talk about external communications, which are things beyond our walls. Of course, there's the website that we've already talked about. For social media, you'll see this sort of these layered files. We've got the YouTube account, is that Facebook? No, excuse me, Instagram above the Facebook account. So all those accounts need to be maintained and constantly monitored. So social media is another piece of what we do. We have the new digital sign, which is, we are limited in terms of what Highlands Ranch allows us to display, the number of slides we can display, the number of nits, which is nits is a fancy term for the luminance of basically the lighting, how bright it can be at what times of day. So we've got these little gauges that we can adjust the lighting and the times of day it can be displayed, and we have to turn it off by a certain time per the Highlands Ranch folks. So, but the nice thing is it's been updated. It is now digital. If we need to display something really quickly, we can. I've been out sitting on that curb with my laptop and my hotspot making changes because I wasn't happy with the lighting and different times of day. So yeah, we've had to really take that one on.
Yeah. Quick question, if I could. Did you say the city regulates the text that we put on there too, the words?
The number of, if you think of them as slides, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And the types of transitions that we can use. So we can't do any fancy, jumpy, wild, nifty transitions because that would be probably distracting for drivers at 50 miles an hour coming up the hill. So, I mean, there's some safety concerns, I'm sure.
So that's their motivation is
yes,
driver
to keep
distraction.
It simple. And you have to, we're regulated in the amount of time between transitions that we can have. So there's a lot to it. It's its own matrix. So yeah, taking on that tool was just another fun one for our tool chest. But it's fine. We take it on. That's really the overview. And I know we have probably a lot of different questions within this room. I've given a presentation similar to this to our seniors at one of the coffee chats, and I know we covered a lot there. But feel free to ask me. Let me just show you something fun. Part of the rebranding, it's our first specialty item, yay! This is our tumbler with the new logo and tagline, and then GoStandAndrew.com on the back. We're going to have a limited number of just basic items with the new logo because people are asking for it, and we're excited about it. So we've already got the tumblers, and they're going to be sold for just really for cost, probably $10 for that. We're going to have nice water bottles coming soon. We've got T-shirts that we're ordering. When you think about it, all the people that serve, not just for Big Serve, but who serve in various capacities for the church, it's kind of nice to have your St. Andrew uniform. I mean, I'm going to go serve at Big Serve. I need my St. Andrew T-shirt. So we'll have those available for sale very soon. We just finalized the design and we're placing the order. So some fun things to come. So how do we want to handle it? We have the mic.
We
floating.
have a wireless microphone back on that side. Frank, if you grab that one, folks want to talk, and then I'll give one from the front here. So fire away with your questions.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all the information that you gave us.
Sure.
This is what I call an annoying question. My assumption is that you had a design firm that was working with St. Andrew when we decided on the colors and, you know, all the fonts and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
And how was there some kind of a process for making a decision as to who? you wanted to
Absolutely.
use?
The process went on for almost a year in its entirety. Once we had gotten through a lot of the brand strategy, then it was time to hand it over to an agency. And this is what I've done, you know, it's like the back of my hand to me, just working with different agencies. We interviewed probably, I'd say maybe 5 or 6 different ad agencies. We ended up with Factor 3, and they're a group out of the DC area. They had done some work with the Greater United Methodist Church, the UMC National, and definitely were in line with us in terms of diversity, inclusion. They had some examples of work they had done with similar churches. And let me tell you, they became the more they got to know who we were, they were geeked about working with us. I mean, they were so excited. They were saying, I can't believe there's really a church that exists, that everything you're telling us, how can this be true? And I said, no, we are legit. This is for real. And, you know, one of the key people from the agency had grown up Catholic and had basically left the church. And she said, I have a family member in Colorado, and if I come visit that family member, I'm coming to visit your church. And she's like, I haven't been in a church in years, just, you know, her own, you know, personal issues with what had happened. So yes, there was a process. It was extensive. We had a great committee that worked on that, both some lay people and some staff members.
Great.
This is my one hit, Marie.
Oh, sure.
Go ahead.
I love the new logo, but it seems asymmetrical to me. That yellow part is like,
Right.
what's going on with that?
Yeah, we do have to work with that, and that's why we were provided with different variations. That was one of the points that I made. I said, just because from a graphic standpoint, I know how tricky it can be to work with those. Sometimes we just use our individual brand mark, which is just, as we call it, the swoosh with the different colors. But having those different horizontal and vertical variations are hugely helpful. We had the similar situation at the Kirk. My husband actually did the design of the Kirk logo, and it's like 20 years going strong now, which it's got some staying power, which is amazing. But it was the same thing. It had a point to it. And it was like, you got into, all right, do we center from the base? Do we center from the point? You know, is it the rolling hills or is it the peak of the tower? So it gets tricky, but we know how to work with it. And it was by far the best representation of who we are. There's a lot of different interpretations when people looked at that design. It's like, you know, moving upward and reaching towards the sky. I mean, there's so many, that's a whole other conversation. All right, next question.
That's okay. I'm gonna go to Jean, but then I want to tell Ann on Zoom, I see her hand up and I'll come to you after.
Oh, good.
Okay, so Jean, go ahead.
I feel like Eddie Fisher in that song, who turned back the hands of time. I'm gonna go back to the mid-1980s. I was at the Swedish Medical Center. The mothership was in the Inglewood. That was before Gulf One. Be that as it may, that's when they discovered marketing. They decided that we needed to have a marketing department.
Right.
It's just self-evident that hospitals generate their own marketing. So the target was the woman, the female. Get a female, get a woman, and you get a family. Targeted. My question for St. Andrews, do we have a targeted area in particular? We have several targets. How do you prioritize? Which one gives more bang for the buck? Bang for the buck being attendance in church, membership hits on the technology side that you can register.
Right.
How do you evaluate and what are the targets, particularly that are critical to St. Andrews at this country?
Were you sitting in the back of our strategy meeting? Because this was constant. It's constant. It's I can't say that there's any one right answer or correct answer, but just know that we are looking at more of that segmentation in terms of the different audiences that we can reach and for different reasons and the different tools with which we reach those audiences. It's its own project in a sense. That what we do have going for us now is the fact that you know, we have rebranded, we've repackaged, we know the tools that we have to use. One thing I didn't mention, there's a few other things that we do, beyond our reach. When I came on board, I noticed that there was a mailing list to new homeowners. I'm like, great, what are we doing with that? And they're like, well, so we've started, we mail to new homeowners in the Highlands Ranch community for 3 times a year, about a month before Easter, about a month before Christmas, and before our annual block party. So that's an example of how we are reaching newcomers. And we've had people come in and tell us, oh, I got your letter in the mail. I got your invitation to come to block party. And we were like, oh my gosh, this is working. We've started with young families in terms of different ways that we, for a while, didn't feel that we were getting many of the families coming back to church after COVID. COVID's another thing that I don't know if you guys realize it's probably affected your lives just like it's affected my life. But at the same time, it's really affected in-person attendance. I mean, we're just now getting back to the level of attendance that we had before COVID. So I think a lot of what we've done with our live streaming, was pretty, it was an investment up front to get that up and running, but now it's really taken off. Based on the success of the live streaming to the broader audience, now we're working on ways in which we can quantify the online viewers and their involvement. That's where the Church Center app comes into play, because we're trying to encourage people who aren't physically here in Highlands Ranch to get involved and be part of an online community. So there's a whole effort in the hospitality and operations area to get those people involved. Young adults is another area where we have some dedicated volunteers, but who have planned out. For example, we just published all of their summer activities, but that's another area where, quite honestly, when we looked at research and some data from other churches, we didn't find another church that wasn't struggling with attracting young adults, really basically between 25 and 40, like maybe before they have families, but after college. So to your point, each of those areas of where we see dips or we see concerns about the growth of the church, there is great discussion about that. There are plans being put in place. Before we could get to some of that, some of the tools needed to be in place first. We went back and forth with a couple of different database options, which affected not just our area, but again, like the hospitality area, how we communicate with our internal membership. That was a big effort in and of itself. And now that we've landed on Church Center for all of our needs in that department, then now we know what we have to work with as far as a tool. I guess I could say that we, like every other church, are struggling with certain demographics. At the same time, unlike many other churches, we've been very successful in some areas, like outstandingly successful in online viewership. It's just the numbers. I mean, I thought we had great numbers at the Kirk. Granted, that was before COVID, but I was building from home during COVID our full services to post online each week. And we had great viewership because people didn't have a choice. Here, they built it, because of COVID. And now the quality was so great that people have really been drawn to sticking with it. So I'm sorry if that was a little long-winded and maybe not as specific as you'd like, but just know that those types of conversations are happening all the time.
Yeah.
I can't say that we have every strategy in place to fix them, but we're aware. We're well aware.
All about demographics.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to go to Ann. Ann, can you hear us okay? Ann, you're muted. Unmute yourself and then give us your big voice.
Anyway, yeah, I do have a big voice anyway. Hi, everybody. Good morning. I was just wondering, how much did the rebranding cost and also the electronic sign?
Rebranding, actually, this group that we selected was definitely not the most expensive. There were a couple of firms that were much more expensive. I would have to go back and pull those numbers. I do have those original invoices in my file in my office. It was, I don't even want to ballpark for you just because I don't want to be off, but it was very reasonable. They gave us a nonprofit rate on top of the fact that that they came in well under what some of the other agencies were billing us. And they got us. They understood who we were, and were excited about being part of the process. So it was very reasonable. The tools have been, again, super reasonable. We negotiated with Subsplash. I was involved with that. Jason, who I'm sure most of you know, was also involved with that process. We negotiated the pieces of the package that that we knew that we would be utilizing versus those that we didn't. And so we ended up with probably about a 40% reduction off of the original package for that. The other tools, Planning Center, which is what Church Center is part of, we were already paying for that. It was just another module that we had never activated. So in other words, it was available to us. I think we pay a little bit more of a monthly charge with adding that module, but we didn't have to start from scratch with them. Whereas when we had, oh gosh, the savings, we were with PushPay. I know this is over everyone's head. We were with PushPay and CCB. They had just signed those contracts when I came on board 2.5 years ago. We're saving, I think, $30,000 a year over what we were paying with PushPay alone. And then CCB couldn't do all the things that we wanted it to do. So we've ended up in a better place technology-wise, and at a lower cost in some situations. So
Would it be possible to email you and get those figures? Also, I'm curious about the electronic sign, how much it cost.
oh, the electronic sign, the nice thing about that was from, Carla, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, that was provided, so we have.
Microphone back to Carla.
We're gonna let
please.
Carla
There we
speak to that because
Okay.
now that she's involved with development, she can tell you how that came about through the Legacy Committee.
Right, so we have a permanent endowment fund. I'm sure there are many members here who are part of the legacy community. The permanent endowment fund is currently valued at about 1.3 million. It's been growing quite a bit the last few years, and every year a certain percentage of that, between 3 and 5%, is pulled out of the fund to be able to use its not the what I'm looking for. But not it's pulled from the investments, how it's grown in investments. And Rev Mark works with the legacy community to come up with ideas for how to best utilize that money. And the sign out front, the electronic sign, was paid for from the permanent endowment fund.
Great.
It wasn't from,
And the trustees approved.
and the
And the
trustees
trustees.
approved, and in other words, it didn't come from, and it did not come from the operational fund.
Very good. And
So
yes,
would it still be possible for me to find out how much the rebranding and the electronic sign cost is my question.
she wants to email you.
Yeah.
I want to,
Through the
Can I email
website.
you?
Yeah. That's public information. It should be.
Yeah,
what
just
we
email me
what
and we
do.
can get back.
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you, Ann. I need to move on. We got a lot of questions. So next is Linda. Go ahead.
I had a question about the bulletins.
Sure.
This church has committed itself to sustainability, recycling, everything. What is the rationale behind having not only a glossy paper used, but 3 different bulletins rather than combining them?
Sure. Have you noticed when you walk into the sanctuary that you do have the option to scan for the bulletin? That was one of the first things I did when I came on board. Or are we still using a print bulletin? It was determined that because each service has a completely different order of worship, it's almost impossible to do one. It was cheaper to do one sheet 3 times than to try and package all of them into more of a booklet. We get the lowest possible price on that paper. Gloss has nothing to do with expense necessarily. It's a paper that has been highly scrutinized, priced out, works well for the purpose that we use it for. Moving just to 1 sheet with a fold has been pretty efficient. When I came on board, I asked why we weren't doing the online, like a digital version, and we were told there was a lot of the audience here that requested paper. So we went to a hybrid. We offer, you can pull up your bulletin at any time as you walk into the service. And we also have print versions as well, because that was the demand, quite honestly. It was the request of the membership.
And there are people that don't have cell phones.
Exactly. There are some people that have a real hard time viewing something like that on a cell phone. And so we have to, I have the same audience here that I did at the Kirk. We go from 0 to 100 and however old the oldest member of this church is. Our audience spans roughly 100 years. So we have many different needs. Another area which I noticed was for the extreme cases where people couldn't even work with the 8.5 by 14 point size, which we've already blown up. We offer a large print version, which we did not do before. It's something I did for our previous church. And so we have a handful of copies. We know about how many people need those each week. It's roughly 5 to 7 people. So we print about 5 to 10 copies a week. So we have to find a balance between, economies of scale and the needs of our congregation. And we walk a tightrope. We try to find alternate solutions. We're very conscious of what we print. One other thing about our print production, just so you know, in the last 2 years, we've invested in our own in-house, a very efficient Canon printer and a Duplo cutting machine, which gives us the same cutting quality as a print house. And so we basically have our own in-house print production. We send out maybe 1 or 2 items to a printer now. We do everything in-house, and our team has sort of, Tori in particular on our team has mastered what needs to be done to print some of that in-house, but we scrutinize over quantity. We don't want to have to recycle more than we need to, but there are still some needs for the print piece, unfortunately, and it's just based on who we are as a congregation.
Or to
Is this
keep
paper
everybody
fully
happy.
recyclable?
Oh, 100%.
Because I don't see any recycled bins anywhere where.
We recycle them.
And
You know how we collect them at the end, the ushers collect them at the end? We have ginormous collection bins, and they all the recycled ones go in the recycling collection bin for sure.
Thank you. Larry?
When I don't come to church, I watch the service on my TV because I can hear my TV. I can't hear my computer. And then when it comes to registering my attendance, I can't scan what's on the TV. So I go into the church app and there's no way to register. And then I have to remember to go to that other app where I could register my attendance. And it's just.
Okay, let me give you a little tip. On your computer, when you're watching, if you go to
I don't watch on a computer.
Okay.
I watch on a TV.
Okay, when you're watching on your TV, on your computer, if you pull up our website, we have an online website page that has everything right there. You can open the bulletin right there. You can log in to let us know you're here. I'll show you after the presentation if you come up. It's really not difficult to do. You could do it on your phone too, but if you need a little bit bigger screen, open your computer. We'll show you how to do that. And you could do that in advance and then sit back and relax and watch your TV.
I can tell Ron.
Ron?
Hi, Ron.
How refreshing to see the diversity stressed in the statement there. In contrast, administration official spoke to one of the military academy groups and said to them, "We don't want diversity, we want unity," which implies everyone should think alike. And that's not what we want in this church, I hope.
I sure hope not.
Can I jump in with a question of my own?
Of course.
Catherine, marketing to the bigger world, what are the most effective ways today to do it? Is it word of mouth, which Rev Marcus told me he really loves word of mouth and thinks that is highly effective. But what about social media? Are newspaper advertising models out of date and don't do any good? How do we really reach out to the community? What brings them in?
Well, sadly, today's community newspapers are a dying breed, as most of you know. And those of you who, like me, have family who have been in that field, and it's similar with advertising. Advertising's really changed. in terms of different tools. But in any case, what's really important is the word of mouth. There are the social media piece is important as well. We share a lot of our events, and we encourage you to share events if you're active on social media. You know,
Is it just young people on social media?
no, you'd be surprised. The demographics for Facebook are much skewed more towards this room. Instagram is a little bit more of a younger crowd, but it also goes all the way up into more of the 60+ crowd. YouTube, a lot of people are just getting almost every bit of their information from YouTube, from news to music to watching us online. Even though we have many different ways that you can live stream through the app, through the computer web browser, but YouTube is not going anywhere. I think we really need to address back to the demographic question. We think through what each audience would best respond to. In other words, we don't blanket say we're only going to do social media advertising, or we're never going to do print again, but we do have to be more selective. Print is probably what we do the least of. We've done some marketing and some push I've done some press releases for various events and activities. A lot of the justice related materials, for example, when we became one of the only churches that received the silver level certification for our environmental efforts. We put out a big release about that. We do a lot of pushing as well through the Mountain Sky Conference. We're part of this larger Mountain Sky Conference, which is part of the larger, greater UMC. And so there have been times that we've done postings and some of the more novel and unique things that we've done as a church. We pushed that out to a broader church audience. But Rev Mark is often the one that comes into like our meetings with stories of in-person connections. And there's no substitute for inviting a friend, bring a friend. To your point, I've been hounding my neighbor about coming to join the pop-up choir because she's Catholic, but she hasn't been going to church. I'm like, if she stepped foot in here with our choir and she knows she knows from hearing me what we're all about in terms of what we stand for, we're going to rope her in. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge, but part of it is are those conversations that we have about each different strategy that's appropriate for it. But it's the days of radio, TV, and print are over. In other words, that's almost non-existent, and it still exists, but those are not the three standard methods of advertising anymore.
I have another question. Are there any security concerns that you have to address within marketing? Specifically, I'm thinking about a church directory and PII, personally identifiable information, which I know is a huge concern for people.
Right. It's a bit out of my area, just in that the database management, well, it was with Barb Witcher, and she retired on Friday, and now we have Jared, who's come on board to work on our database. We're very protective of that information. In other words, we do not give out our email addresses. We had a similar situation with the Kirk, where someone used all of the church emails. It was a nightmare to push out something actually political.
Yeah.
So it just became a real nightmare. I will say that we're careful about using personal emails. We try to funnel, like, for example, we like to give contact information for our events. Go to outreach at gosaintandrew.com, go to youth at gosaintandrew.com. If it's a personal email, we either give them access to those email addresses to where they can check the messages, or we make sure that it's just like maybe a print piece. If we have their permission, they might want a flyer. Monica might say, oh, it's okay to put my email like on a print piece, but we're very careful about putting anything out digitally which involve any members' emails. We're really strict about that.
Scammers today.
Yeah.
Man.
Well, Catherine,
First of all, yes, my name is Ann, and I am from Bloomfield, Birmingham, Michigan.
Yay.
So there's a lot terrific at your detail and explanation of what marketing is about. It's almost, I don't know, speaking for myself, it's almost too much information right now. And to add Warmley's question, I too question whether we really needed to spend money rebranding. I don't understand why we're doing that, except that it costs money. The name tags in particular, looking at an audience here that is older and they can't see as well as they used to, they might think they can. The name tags are smaller, the print is smaller. I don't think it really is fitting into what we need right now for our church. We're getting too much corporate in my mind. What happened to worship? We come to church for worship.
Okay,
let's let her tell why
branding is good. Good point.
Okay.
Why
As far as
branding
the-
important?
Well, let me address the name badges real quickly. The name badges came by request. We were asked to do new name badges, and we went with something definitely less expensive than the ones that we sent off, those thick acrylic things that we sent off to be individually manufactured. So we came up with a low-cost alternative for that, and it's something that we can handle in-house. The weight of the larger size comes into play. Like when we tested them, they would get really kind of floppy. You know, they would flop off of people's shirts and lapels and things. So.
Catherine, you're missing my point. We didn't need to do it at all.
Oh, well, I guess you have to address, you know, again, our audience was asking for new name tags, and we tried to go with just label print, encouraging people to wear a name. That was one of Rev Mark's pushes. He says, I want people to know each other's names, and we want to be a welcoming community. So just so you know, the demand was there to have name tags, and we didn't want them to be temporary and wasteful. We wanted something that was reusable, that was manageable, that we could print in-house. So, you know, we're really happy with the solution that was requested.
Larger.
They're asking, why not print larger? Make it bigger name.
Yeah, I think they looked at larger samples and felt that they were too cumbersome. With the magnets, it was just, this seemed to be the sweet spot in terms of size.
I'm just talking about the font.
Yeah,
These are very difficult for a lot of people to see.
sure.
The other ones had larger print. Is it possible with these to use a larger print?
Well, there's a couple of options, and I have a sample of the previous tag as well in my office, so.
There's Steve's wearing one.
So exactly. There's very little difference in the size of the point size. Also, we also looked at whether or not they should just be first name only, because we could go a bit larger. Again, you're at the mercy of, I mean, Catherine has 9 characters, so, you know, there's only so large you can go with the font with a long name. So we tested some really long names to see if we could find the sweet spot. This was quite a process. But I can pass this feedback along to Carly and let her know the comments that we received in this meeting. I'm happy to.
Gene has a quick comment.
Yeah, a quick comment. Back in Michigan, I think the same location there, there's a church called the Church of All Ages. My question is, since St. Andrews is becoming so ecumenical, this outreach and marketing, et cetera, and so forth, are we wedded to having St. Andrews always as our denominational identity? Or would it be, we hope in talking about community concept and so forth, something that would be even more inclusive? Just a question.
You know, that came up in our original strategy meetings. There was a lot of conversation about that, about our name as it is. We landed on St. Andrew with the option to go with or without the UMC, because as most of you know, what's happened within the Greater United Methodist Church in the last few years. So for some people, it was really important that we still have that it was still known. For example, Rhonda in the kids ministry gave a great example of a family who moved here and they were specifically looking for a Methodist church. So if we didn't have any mention of UMC, they may have passed us by. So that's why we have different versions. Sometimes we just go with St. Andrew. Sometimes it's important to add the UMC. Sometimes we do an abbreviated version, which is just a United Methodist Community. And that came from Rev Mark and a couple of other decision makers, that was an acceptable alternative to saying the full St. Andrew United Methodist Church. We could also just say St. Andrew, a United Methodist Community, to connect to our Methodist roots. So yes, there was a lot of discussion about that, but the decision was to stick with St. Andrew, but that we didn't always have to use the UMC portion. There were ways to go about messaging that didn't have to always be in the name. So we look at all these things on an individual basis. Every time we do a print piece, it's like, is this going outside of our building? Does it need the full UMC, or can we just do the same? I mean, it's a big part of what we talk about daily. Larry?
Relax, everybody. They didn't give us the forehead tattoo.
Why wasn't the female who read the scripture today and did part, why wasn't she named in the bulletin?
Yeah, it was like, we didn't know who she was. She's been introduced before.
You know what? I wasn't in the service today.
There was no.
Then it wasn't in planning center. I wonder, did she fill in for someone?
Well, she's ordained. She had her. And she has been leading previous to this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oversight.
Yeah, oh, you know what, and sometimes for guests, that information is given on the screen, because believe it or not, sometimes that changes. And with the print, our print pieces are done by Thursday afternoon. So if anything were to ever change, the beauty of having the screen is that Micah can change that at the 11th hour, and trust me, it has been done. So I don't believe it was in planning. If it's not in planning center, which is where that's our source data.
Okay.
If it's not intended to be printed, and there are plenty of things in planning center that we are told, yes, this is printed in the bulletin, and no, these are just side notes, or they'll be addressed in the lower thirds. Lower thirds, or the lower third part of the screen, enables us to list detailed information like that.
Like a scramble when Jerry's mic started going bang, bang, bang.
I missed all the fun this morning.
You did.
Oh, well,
We've got
I'll
about
go back and watch it.
3 minutes left. Catherine, what percentage of all of our attendees get the Friday e-news that tells about everything going on in the week?
Sure, I can give you some statistics on that. We use a tool called Emma. It's an online email marketing tool. It's very similar to Constant Contact or MailChimp. I've used both of those other tools. Emma's very similar. We mail our weekly e-news mailing list right now is just under 3,000.
Wow.
And our average open rate is in the mid 50s to upper 50s. For, like, in other words, how many of those 3,000 people open that email and actually read it? And then we have statistics on how many people click on the links and which links and how many times they click on the links. So it's a pretty robust program. But just to give you an idea, 10 or 20% open rate is considered successful. Carla, you and I had this conversation about, she asked about what's your open rate for emails. I said, believe it or not, we're in the 50s. Our music emails get opened, the MZ, Mark Swilling, pumps out every week. It's like in the 70s, because again, it's a target audience that are looking for that information. So for us to be over 50% open rate, we're really pleased with that.
And how about the new apps? Are a lot of people downloading that? Can you tell how many?
Yes, I haven't checked that figure in a while. We were keeping up with that right after the launch. We were looking at the number of people who had downloaded. But yeah, those statistics are available. You can see who's downloaded them, kind of get a sense of who's using them.
And is that young people, or are the older people using the apps too?
Well, guess what? It doesn't break by age for that. We see numbers. We see numbers of downloads, but unlike Emma, we don't see like who those people are and how old they are.
Is it becoming kind of a hard sell to tell us old folks what the apps are about and why they're useful for us?
I will say that the best way to look at this as if you could see your future. This is the future. Get used to the fact that, you know, people were so excited. Okay, yay, the new site's finally built. Well, I know from having built 5 or 6 websites, I'm only about 2 years from having to do this over again. In other words, technology changes so often, platforms change, features change, demands and needs change. And it's just like needing a new phone. I mean, it's technology is ever present and always evolving. So just buckle up.
So may I make a suggestion for corrections on how to open the app?
We had some cards, like tutorial cards about the app that were out for a few months.
May
But
I suggest you pass the information along to Steve and he can do it to everybody in this class?
sure, oh yeah.
Because we are, my technology abilities since I've left work are back here rather than out here, so.
I
Just
completely
show us how-
understand. One of the things I think that was helpful when I came and met with the seniors for the coffee chat was that afterwards we had some one-on-one time and I could work through that with people. I mean, we all have aging parents and neighbors and neighbors and friends who need it's called digital assistance. At the Kirk, we offer digital assistance classes, and that's basically what I brought to the senior group because I knew that there was a
And I
need for
missed
that.
that.
Oh, darn it, that's
We'll
why I
do
missed
some more.
that.
We've got to go, but last comment, Tom Craig.
Yeah, before
Hi.
we break up, I'd just like to say thank you.
Of course.
And
I'm so happy to be here.
I do not emphasize the level of professionalism and sophistication that you've moved us to is just remarkable. So,
Well, happy to help. Happy to be here.
Gotta go. We gotta let our people go. Thank you, Catherine.
Of course. Thank you, Steve.
Do you know where that design originated?
Yeah, this is
Back in the 70s or 60s, acquired the fire. That's where
Oh,
it's
yeah, there's a very,
I
walked in here, it was like 4 or 5
to get you to have
And then it kicked on, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever?
They wanted to do it themselves.
Oh, there she came.
Well, that's what happened.